My name is Danny Fenton and I'm an aeromodeller and an engineer. Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling.
Welcome again, modelers, to another video. The figures on the last one were very good, so obviously you've been waiting for the chipmunk videos to come back, and the van one maybe wasn't as popular as I thought it would be, but not to worry, it was good fun. So in the previous video you saw me fitting the cowl and hinging it and this sort of stuff. Well, in this video I'm going to show you the mounting of the motor and how things went kind of wrong again. I'm getting used to this. I think it's because I've been laid off for so long that I'm just not doing things the way they should be done. Anyway, warts and all, you're seeing it all. So what happened was, when I fitted the motor and then fitted the cowl, you can guess, the centre of the motor didn't line up with the centre of the cowl. And you think, great. After all that care and trouble to get it all lined up, I think it's because the cowl was effectively made from a lump of foam, and it wasn't actually on the model. The best way to make a cowl is actually on the model, and then, you know, fit your foam to the model and then carve it and shape it and then pull the foam off and make your mould. I didn't do it that way, and I didn't really have the option to do it that way. And because this is being modified as you go along, it's not really following a plan either. So it's very ad hoc. So there we go. Anyway, so what I'm having to do is change all the mountings for the cowl, and it's not actually as disastrous as it would sound. You'd think, oh great, but I need to move the ring, the spinner ring on the cowl, up and over, and it's probably it's got to come up about 5 mil and go over about 5 mil. So it's quite a bit of an error. But actually, what I'll do is I'll just blank off the holes, and you can see I've started to do it here. I'll blank off the holes for the cowl and re-drill the holes in a slightly different position so that I can then fill the holes in. So it's not as big an issue as you'd think. Anyway, in this video we'll look at trying to make that happen.
As you can see, I've added a block of wood to the underside of the cowl, well, the underside of the bulkhead, and I'm gradually sanding this down so that the cowl will fit and that will hold the bottom steady. I'm then going to add another probably a 1/4 inch square section all the way to the front that sits in that, and I'm not sure how I'm going to tie it in at the front yet, but somehow it may actually only need to be that long, and just straddle that former and just give a little bit more support to the front end. We'll just have to see how strong it feels with just this one in place and whether we have to add a bit more. I'll carry on sanding this down and then we'll try the cowl again and just see if we're getting any closer. Getting closer. Now, I've shown you this trick before with a piece of paper. So what I'm going to do, mount it flat on the fuselage, but allow it to ride up onto these little ramps, and these are to bring it up to the same level. Then all we do on the piece of paper is we find our pen, which we've lost, and we mark on the paper where the blocks are. In fact, if I run my finger along it, I can actually pick up an indentation. Lay the other one on. Nice and flat. And again, just mark where the wooden blocks are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put screw holes through the cowl into that wood. Okay, so we refit the cowl again. just as we've done before. This time we make sure those pieces of paper are on the outside. Do it up properly. Okay, and we flip it over again, and we position the cowl where we want it, which is there. So what I'm going to do is put a bit of tape on the cowl itself so that it's holding it in place. Then when I look underneath, I can see where I've got it, where I want it. And then these will tell me where I can make the holes. And I can make one there, just make a flipping hole. It's just as easy. And there we have the holes. There we go, that's gone through the glass. So now we line this up exactly as we want it. Peel these back off. These can come off now as well. And there should be a hole in there that we can work to. Cowl comes off again. As I said before, cowl is just on, off, on, off, on, off. And there's our hole. So we need to come about 1/8 of an inch further forward on the other holes. Because we're a bit close towards the edge of the block. And there we go. Well, that's nice and rigid. I don't think we'll need any more than that. Hopefully that will just pull into place gently, and it does. So the two fasteners will align it and hold it in place. That's lovely. So that's good. So there we are. The cowl is now nice and solid. Obviously that bit can lift as much as we need, but the rest of the cowl is now rigid. And that's what we need. Now whether or not I cut the other side off, I think I'm probably creating more work for myself than I need to. I'm not sure that the access on the other side is going to be needed. I can get in here enough to get to the motor. What I do need to do next is make sure I can actually slide batteries into that area there. So this model is going to go off of 10S. So I've got two 5000 5S packs here, and I'm going to run 2 of these in series to give me my 10S. These are 40C rating, should be enough. So what I need to do is just figure out if they will fit in here, how easily. and that's gone right back to the wing. And the second one is not quite so easy to fit in. Okay, let's try laying them on this side. Not quite as easy as I'd hoped it was going to be, considering the size of the model. If I was to bolt two of these batteries together onto a tray to make it a big set, could I slide that in one? No, I can't. That's a bit frustrating, isn't it? I think what I need to do is take the side off. Now that we're happy that the cowl fits and is good to go, I'll take the cowl off and we'll have another play. Right, so once again, you've seen this before, but I'm just going to show you. How the pin comes out, and then the cowl is separate. It's in two parts. Now we should be able to fit the parts without too much trouble, he says, famous last words. When I see how open this side is with the side off, I mean, it's lovely, you can get in without any problem. It does make me wonder whether it would have been better to have done some sort of hook system so that the side could be hooked underneath and then clasped at the bottom. And that way you could take the cowl side off completely. You haven't got it hinged out the way. But there we go. So back to where we were. One pack will go in no problem on its own. And a second one will go in as well. But how we retain them is my problem. So what I've decided I'm going to try is I'm going to cut out, whether you can see that video, I'm going to cut out the little notch here. This will allow this lot to go in. Now what I'm thinking of doing is having the packs this way up, so the wires are at the top. And what I'm thinking of doing is actually mounting the two batteries in a sort of a cradle or a sled, and then I can velcro the packs to the sled so that they can't slide around. Then the sled goes into the fuselage and locates, and then on the side of the sled I want to make some sort of bracketry that they'll maybe then screw to this 1/4 inch bulkhead here, so that I'm actually locking the cradle into the model and lock the batteries into the cradle. I think that's the easiest way of doing it, but it doesn't seem to matter what I do. I can't really get easy access to the battery compartment unless I remove that section there. So now we've just got to join the sections together. Let's see what we can use to do that. This is a small permagrit flat file. Let's see if we can do it with that. And there we go. Fairly easy way to cut out big sections in an awkward to reach area like that, just to chain drill it. Then if we tidy up the edge, just going to use a cone, another permagrip tool, but it's a cone this time, just to radius off that edge. And there we have the section rounded off, so that we've got much better access now. So now when we want to put the batteries in, if we consider these two batteries are now bolted together like that, we can now go in, hopefully, like that. And it still won't go. I mean, we can now put one in fairly easily, and then the other not fairly easily. So if we put one on top of the other like that, it's a struggle, not quite enough room. No, it will go, it will go. So what I need to do is to make some sort of box for these guys to sit in, because it would be nice if I can bring the battery packs as far forward as this, because that will really help with the C or G. They can't come too much further forward because there is actually going to be a dummy engine in here, or half of a dummy cylinder, but it won't come any further back than the back of this section here. I think that's doable. You know, even if I somehow put a tray and that one tray clamps to there, and then this one has another tray and that clamps to there. So I just need to put two blind nuts on here and two screws, or two thumb screws, to actually clamp the trays. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way of doing this. And then just slide them in one at a time. Actually, that will work very well, I think. So we'll do that. Two trays, and they'll clamp onto that bulkhead there. I can still remove some of this if I really want to, as long as I leave, say, 25mm section, a 20mm section, something like that, for me to clamp the batteries to. And that will give me a good reason for keeping this 4 ply here, because it's not really doing anything else. But that will now become my mount for the batteries, effectively, and give me something to anchor them to stop them sliding forward or dropping back. So there we go. I think the next thing we'll look at is we need to work out how far back, and I've made a small hole in the front of the cowl right in the middle of the spinner hole. So I need to work out or measure that distance there. And in fact, I've just done the measurement. There it is. So the measurement is 108mm. Yep, 108mm from the back plate of the spinner to the motor box. So it's 108. I'm going to make it 110 to give me 2mm clearance. So that's 110mm. Here's the motor that's going to go into this thing. I have 4 or 5 different kV versions of this. This is a 6364. This is the 190 kV, but I have 2 or 3 different kVs going up from 190, so that if I need a bit more power, obviously I can increase the kV and it'll give me a bit more RPM. The way I mount these is I mount the cruciform on the back of the motor. The bit of shaft that's sticking out, I mean, some people cut them off. I don't do anything with them, I just leave them. That shaft will actually sit inside the box that brings the motor forward. So if you remember, we've got 110mm. is the distance we need to sort out, and this motor from the front to the back is 80 mil, and we've got to sort out 110, so that leaves us 30 millimeters. So that box that we need to make has to be 30 millimeters deep. So we'll make a nice ply box, 30 millimeters deep, probably in quarter ply. The sides might be just eighth because it's not actually very deep. And we need to work out how we're going to attach that box to that bulkhead, and then how we're going to attach the motor to that box. Okay, so that's the next thing, is to make this 30 millimeter deep box. So what I've done is I've taken the cruciform backplate, which is for the electric motor, and I've positioned it such that it's centered, and I've slid it along the lines until it's right in the middle, and then I've drawn through the motor mounting holes, which are the outer ones, and they're the 4 marks that I'm now going to drill out with a 1/8 drill. So I could find a longer drill bit. Here's a 3 millimeter drill bit, but the problem still was the chuck. So what I've done is I've switched the drill and put it in my Dremel, which allows me to get a little bit, makes it a little bit easier. Whether or not I'll actually still be able to get close enough because of this thing being in the way, I don't know. We'll give it a go. So what I'm going to do is I'll do it freehand again. That's interesting, that's not 3 mil. Must be 3.5 mil. So I'll hold this by hand. And that's not going to go through either, because the thickness of the block plus the drill bit isn't going to work. Okay, as it happens, I do have a really long drill bit. I have 4 of these, and they're for going through wings and stuff. If you look on eBay and what have you, in Amazon, you'll find that you can get drill bits that are really long. Okay, so this should do it. So through that hole, and you've got to clamp it. I've got a clamp that's going to do it, so I'm going to just hold it tight with my hand, spin the drill. Well, that was not as easy as I thought it would be. Using a hand drill would have been a lot easier, but I couldn't get in there past the chuck, or past the former. Anyway, we've done what we needed to do. Sorry if you couldn't actually see what I was doing there, but I was actually using the threaded rod in a drill to cut my way through. The holes were okay, but they were right on the right size. So now actually the threaded rods are really, really snug. They actually thread through both bulkheads. So all I need to do now is a 4 mil nut, or a 3 mil, I'm not sure what that is, 3 or 4 mil nut on this back side with some penny washers. And then on this side the stud protrudes, and I need to make 4 25 millimeter long aluminium spacers, and the spacers need to have a hole down the middle of 4 millimeters. Alright, so I'm going to have to venture the cold and go and make those on the lathe. So I'll be back in a bit. Okay, as you can see, we've made quite a bit of progress. So what I've had to do, I don't know whether you can see in there, what I've had to do is I've had to move the entire cowl up at the front and across to the port side at the front. So the whole thing has shifted. And what I've had to do, which again you might not be able to see, if I rotate it back, on top of this quarters section that runs along the top, I've actually added a whole strip of 1/8 ply all the way along the whole top to raise it up. enough, and at the back that rear screw is in the same place that it was before, so that 1/8 ply is sort of chamfered in to fit that one screw there. Then I've re-drilled the holes in the top, and using a spinner back plate that's a little bit small but it's close enough, I'm able to center the cowl, drill these holes, tap them, and away we go. I then had to monkey around with the spacing at the back of the cowl on either side to make sure it was even, i.e. that this bottom section was rotated or aligned properly, because remember there's nothing, it's not touching any of the fuselage at the back here, so it's clear. So you can move the bottom right and left to alter the spacing on the sides and get them balanced. So I got them balanced. There's a piece of quarter ply inset inside attached to the fuselage, and I've tapped and drilled holes, or drilled and tapped holes there to hold this in that position. Now this cowl, I mean, is absolutely solid. I don't think I've ever had a cowl that is I could pick the model up on the cowl, and this is definitely strong enough. The shape of the curvature had gone a little bit awry and it was bulging just here, so I've had to add another screw just here, and then there's a ply block on the inside of the cowl on that bulkhead that pulls it into, and it just pulls it down just that little bit. So now when the cowl side is positioned, you can see it fits perfectly. You do have to hold it and sort of bend it a little bit to get it to go, but you'll see when we fit these two catches here, they will lock it in place with any luck. So that's where we're at on that. What I've been doing just now is I've been monkeying around with the cowl openings and stuff. So this basically is the quarter scale side of the cowl, and I was able to lay that on, and you mustn't curve it around the shape because the 3 view is viewed from the side, not curved. Okay, it's flat. So what you have to do is you have to hold the drawing above it and then eyeball through the hole and draw. You can't just lay it on there and draw. That won't work because you'll be distorting it. Okay, it's a plain view like that. What you could do is you could get a bright light and shine it down and draw around the shadow. This next bit is quite difficult for that because it's going to be difficult for you to see. You can see the shape of the nose cone and the cutout. Now if I was to lay that on the fuselage, you'd realise if I just laid it flat that little pencil line is the outline if you lay it flat, but it isn't flat. It has to be held like that, and you have to project through. So what I did was I looked through from this side while holding a pencil at the back, and I traced the line there, and you can see how much bigger it is than if you just laid it flat. Okay, so you've got to get that right. Now to confirm all that, you then need to use the side view of the cowl, that way up, sorry, and that's the slot or the air intake from the side. So again, you do the same thing but from the side, and you hold it above where you want and you project your line through, and you hope that between the two you'll end up with a shape. So that's the shape that I've got to cut out. As frightening as it looks, that's how it's got to be. Yeah, no, that's how it's got to be. And the distance from there to there is correct, so there we go. And these drawings are my 3D drawings that I created, and I created them by tracing the outline of an actual photograph of my subject from a long way away, so the parallax error was reduced. So I'm pretty certain that's the shape I've got to cut out, that's the hole I've got to end up with, and I've also added where the scoop will be on this side and where the two fasteners are going to be. So the next thing I'm going to do is either the fasteners or the scoop, and I think it's probably going to be the fasteners. So I've used this technique many times. You've seen it before, where I put some paper over the top of a surface where I need to check for reference marks. So I've set the door or the panel exactly where I want it, and I've positioned the paper and marked where the holes are that the catches are going to be. So those pieces of paper now will hold that reference point. What I'm going to do is I need to put 2 catches here, and they're actually floating in midair. So what I've decided to use is some aluminium strips. So I've just cut these from some alloy. It's probably about 2 mil thick by the look of it. I'm not really sure. Yeah, about 2 mil. And then I've drilled a hole in one end and radiused it, and then the other end has got 2 holes. And what I've done, they're drilled out to 1.6 mil. 1.6 mil is, let me just double check that. Yeah, so that's 1.6, that drill bit. So that's the clearance hole for an M2 metric 2 tap. So take that out to 1.6. Get there in a minute. There we go. Take that to 1.6. And then I have an M2 tap. And I've just put it in a little chuck. I like to hold these and do it by hand. I find if it's got a Tommy bar on it, it's actually hard to turn, whereas this is quite easy to spin in your fingers. So we need to tap this M2. And what you should do is half turn forward, quarter of turn back. But on these little threads it's not too bad, and that's actually cut it now anyway. So I'm just running it through just to make sure. And we'll run it back out again. So that's now tapped M2. Model Fixings is the guys I use for screws and stuff like that. I've mentioned them many times before. Sorry, I can't really help you if you're not in the UK, but I hear McMaster Carr is the place to go in the States. These little M2 countersunks, just to prove that they do thread quite nicely into the bracket. You can see I've just put the bar into the vise and just gently bent it repeatedly all over its whole length to get that sort of radius on it. That's the sort of curve I want. Now these are going to be glued as well as screwed, but for now I'll just use the screws. These screws may look the same size as these ones I used for the cowl, but these cowl ones are M2.5, whereas these are M2. And when you order these from Model Fixings, you get the option to buy a little tiny screwdriver to do it. There we go, that's better. That's got to come this way a bit. There we go, that's got it. Let's put a little mark there and see what see where that comes out. Right on the edge. That's not very good. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lever this right forward so that the hole lines up. That's better. Yeah. So that hole now lines up with that hole. I shouldn't have drilled that hole yet. So what I'm going to do is, without moving that, the metal goes a lot further than there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another hole just there. Now there should be a purple mark there where I need to make another hole, and that should all align then, I hope. So there's the purple mark where I make another hole and tap that. So that's another hole drilled, another 1.6 mil hole drilled in there. So now all we've got to do is just tap that with the M2. Then that one should sort of go in there. You notice I have loads of these, I don't know what you call them, mandrels I suppose. I have lots of them with different size drill bits in. I don't like to use power tools. There we go, that's gone straight in, which is a good sign. It's obviously more accurate than the other one. What I should have done is not drilled those at all. I should have clamped this bracket in place and then drilled the holes in situ. But anyway, you live and learn. So that's that one. It's a purple mark there, and hopefully this is still going to be sitting on that purple mark. Okay, so that's an additional hole just made. Make sure it all still aligns. As I think I've already said, that's going to be epoxied to the cowl. So now that hole there should line up with that hole there. And there it does. And when it's pulled down and that's pulled up, you get an idea of how that's going to sit. So I promised you this bit would be quite interesting, and I hope it is. What I've done is I've fashioned this. Now it's a metal bracket. It fits inside the cowl just here, and it comprises of a piano wire sort of hoop, or a figure 9 or a Q or whatever you want to call it, and it goes through a small block of quarter ply. The hole down the middle is 0.8 mil, the piano wire is 0.8 mil, and there's a short section of spring underneath it, and then a collet. Now once I'm happy with the design and the springing and everything else, I might replace the collet with a soldered washer. That should be fine. It'll be a little bit, I'm not really worried about weight, but that's all it needs, and it seems a bit of a waste to use a collet for something like this. But anyway, the idea is that that hoop then is spring loaded, and it pulls with quite a bit of tension. So what we do is we mount this just here, using these little 2 mil set screws, countersunk set screws. Now I'll probably glue these brackets to the cowl and remove the screws when I'm happy with the position and everything else prior to paint. But what happens is, and ignore this one, I've already done this one, so but I'm going to modify that one. So what you do is you angle the little hook so it's vertical, and there's a vertical slot cut in the cowl, and you simply push the cowl over the hooks like that, and then all you need is a piece of piano wire with a hook in it, and I've made one, but let's just make another one real quick. So there's a piece of piano wire with a hook. So all you do is you just grab the spring, grab the hook, pull it, twist it through 90 degrees, and then that now is well and truly secure. Okay, this one is the same. This is the previous version, but you'll see the loop is bigger, and also it's free to wobble from side to side. This one is more rigid. It's much more refined. Okay. So if you open it, you'll see how that's been achieved. When I showed you earlier, it's got a block of wood with a hole through it, the 0.8 hole, and what that means is that the pin can't wobble around the way this one can. See, so the block of the wood at the back keeps it stable, and the hoop needs to be slightly smaller. So there you go. That's how the cowl is held shut. And if you look at the full size, that's exactly how the full size is done as well on most de Havilland aircraft, Tiger Moths and Chipmunks included. All right, I thought it was quite cunning and interesting, but there you go. All right, well there you go, that's enough I think for one video. If you've enjoyed it, please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one, if you've got any stamina left.